Hello, everybody. I'm Justin. Oh, yeah. I kicked Nick off the show. He won't be here anymore. I decided I would do better without him, but I'm only kidding. FF in the Zone is made up of Justin and Nick, so hello, everybody. I'm Justin.
And I'm Nick.
And we are Fans Football in the Zone. So now that week 13 is officially here, but first we want to wish everybody happy Thanksgiving because it was yesterday. And
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving. And this week is probably your last week of the fantasy regular season unless you have one more week to go.
14-game leagues.
Let's start off with a week recap of yesterday. It all started with the Detroit Lions defeating the Green Bay Packers with the final score of 40-10. And Drake Bell and Reggie Bush had two great days. And Drake Bell, do you think he could be a nice flex option going forward?
I think he's a flex option depending the matchup. Not an every week starter, but he's one of the best handcuffs out there.
Because Reggie Bush is also getting hurt.
And he fumbles a lot and gets benched.
And the next, also, I want to say, Eddie Lacy didn't have a good day, but don't be worried because Aaron Rodgers is most likely back next week.
So defenses are going to have to push off Lacy.
They're going to not be able to stack the box anymore with Aaron Rodgers because we all know what Aaron Rodgers can do, and they're not going to be able to stack the box, and it's going to open up more holes for Eddie Lacy. And it also
his value goes up.
But it also helps not only if you start Jared Boykin yesterday and he got a 0 and disappointed in Jordy Nelson, don't be afraid anymore because Aaron Rodgers will be back. Next game was the Dallas Cowboys defeated the Oakland Raiders, with the final score of 31-24. And Rashard Jennings had 2 touchdowns, not a lot of yards. Lance Dunbar, he had a pretty good day, but unfortunately,
season-ending surgery probably.
And hopefully we wish him a speedy recovery. But a guy we want to talk about is DeMarco Murray. He had 3 touchdowns, and if you start him, you got the reward, and he's a high-end 2 moving forward.
He's a high-end 2. He's a very, very solid 2.
And we expected a bigger day from Tony Romo,
but he still had
good day.
Mediocre numbers.
Possibly the game of the night, the Baltimore Ravens defeated the Pittsburgh Steelers. And a guy, when you see your running back is playing the Baltimore Ravens, you get disappointed because the Baltimore Ravens before this game only let 1 fantasy touchdown in the end zone. So Le'Veon Bell almost had 2. He had 1 touchdown with 73 yards.
On the second one, his helmet flew off.
And once the helmet comes off, the play is automatically dead. So he does most likely have a concussion. So we hope he could get back in soon.
Let's move on to our starts and sits. Let's start with the star quarterbacks. The 2 guys that I like are Eli Manning and Andy Dalton. The Chargers allow a lot of fantasy points to quarterbacks, and Eli Manning has a great matchup.
2 guys I want to talk about is Phillip Rivers and Josh McCown. Last week I was totally wrong about Phillip Rivers. I admit it. I said to sit him, but I didn't like the matchup. But that taught me something. I learned that Phillip Rivers became a must-start, and no matter what the matchup is, he's going to score fantasy points. And Josh McCown, he just has a great matchup versus Minnesota.
Let's move on to the sit-em QBs. The 2 guys that I don't like are Andrew Luck and Mike Lennon. Luck been on a bad slide, and he needs to gain his confidence back.
2 guys I want to talk about is Ryan Tannehill, I don't like this week, and Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson, I don't like this week. You probably can't sit him. The only way I would not play him is if you have a better option. But when you see Saints defense, they're a very underrated defense, and look what they did with Tony Romo. And I would just stay away from Russell Wilson if you can.
Let's move on to the starting running backs. My start running backs are Fred Jackson and Gio Bernard.
Great matchup.
Fred Jackson has an incredible matchup.
And also C.J. Spiller I think he could have a big day too.
He could be started.
My 2 start running backs are Andre Brown and Shane Vereen. Andre Brown has a great matchup versus Washington. They're awful against the run. But Shane Vereen I want to talk about. Bill Belichick and Tom Brady trust this kid, and Stephen Ridley, if he fumbles, he gets benched. So they trust Shane Vereen. But not only he has a pretty tough matchup against the run, but that's not really why I like him. I like him not only because he'll get a lot of carries and they trust him, but because he's a PPR machine, he gets a lot of catches in the backfield.
Let's move on to sit-em running backs. The 2 guys I don't like are Steven Jackson and Lamar Miller. They haven't been very good this season. They both have tough matchups.
2 guys I don't like this week is Bobby Rainey and Benny Cunningham. Bobby Rainey I didn't like last week, and he has a tough matchup versus Carolina. But Benny Cunningham, Zach Stacy might not play, but I still don't like Benny Cunningham, and I definitely stay away from him if Zach Stacy does play. But I don't like him this week because he has a tough matchup versus the 49ers, and I just don't have high expectations for him like last week.
Let's move on to stardom wide receivers. The two guys that I like are Kendall Wright and Josh Gordon. Josh Gordon been one of the hottest receivers in football, and he's going up against Jacksonville.
Which Jacksonville has been surprising lately, and they have been scoring, but defensively they're not that great.
They're awful.
Alshon Jeffrey, I like this week. He has a great matchup versus versus Minnesota Vikings. But I also like Harry Douglas. The Bills secondary is really banged up, and they haven't really been good as a football team, and I like Harry Douglas this week.
Let's move on to sit-em wide receivers. The two guys I don't like are Cecil Shorts and Vincent Jackson. Cecil Shorts is going up against Joe Hayden, and Joe Hayden plays shutdown.
The two wide receivers I don't like this week is Marcus Colston and Andre Johnson. Marcus Colston, he hasn't been really good, and he's been very inconsistent, and he has a pretty tough matchup. And I also don't like Andre Johnson because he will be going up against a shutdown corner and Aqib Talib, and he hasn't been really good in the last few weeks.
Let's move on.
And also Steve Smith, don't like him either.
Let's move on to stardom tight ends. The two guys I like are Jordan Cameron, who's going up against the Jags, and I also like Martellus Bennett for this week.
Two tight ends I like this week is Coby Fleener versus Tennessee. He's emerging as, Andrew Luck and him have very good chemistry, and
they
also
like each other a lot.
And they were also on the same team in college at Stanford, and that boosts up their chemistry. And Scott Chandler versus Atlanta, I think, could be a nice sleeper, and also John Carlson could be another sleeper because it's so hard to predict. And Chicago, Lance Briggs, he's injured, and they haven't been able to stop anybody.
Let's move on to sit-em tight ends. The two guys I don't like are Antonio Gates and Tim Wright. Antonio Gates has been good, but he cooled off, and he has a tough matchup.
The two tight ends I don't like this week is Charles Clay versus the Jets. The Jets, they've been pretty good against tight ends, and Jared Cook versus San Francisco. In the beginning of the year, he was so hot, and he cooled off for the rest of the season. He only had a few good weeks in the beginning. And San Francisco, like I said, has a pretty good defense.
Let's move on to sleeper defenses. My sleeper defense is the Browns. They're going up against Jacksonville. Expect a lot of points. Yeah.
And a defense I like this week is Miami Dolphins. Not only the Dolphins been pretty good defensively, but they're playing the Jets, and the Jets caused so many turnovers. And the reason why Geno Smith has 8 touchdowns with 18 interceptions and 4 fumbles in only 11 games.
Yeah.
So he causes so many turnovers, and every week I would start the defense against him if you can.
That's
it for now. Thanks for watching. Leave a comment, like this video, and also go back to the video about our debate and comment who you want to win.